So hello, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We are the Norfolk Southern capstone team, and today we'll be discussing our local operating performance adherence investigation for the Blue Ridge Division. And we're going to do some brief introductions now.
I'm Jackson France. I was a finance undergrad at Virginia Tech, and I'm looking for data analyst roles.
I'm Logan Olson. I have a management consulting degree from Virginia Tech. I'm also looking for data analyst roles.
And I'm Paul Rourke. I have an undergraduate degree in chemistry from here at Virginia Tech, and I'll be working as a sales and operations analyst in Atlanta in the fall.
I'm Brock Shorten. I graduated from Virginia Tech with a bachelor's and a master's in mechanical engineering. And after graduation, I will be working as an engineer for the Army doing military equipment testing.
We want to acknowledge all the people who have helped us on this project, our sponsors at Norfolk Southern, both Andrew Allwine and Megan Akamasi for your support, and Dr. Cliff Ragsdale for being our faculty advisor on the short-term notice. So thank you so much. And now we're going to do a little bit about Norfolk Southern. So they are one of 7 Class 1 railways operating in the United States. And a Class 1 railway is classified as a company that has over $950 million in revenue as of 2021. They have over 19,500 track miles and operate in 22 states, including Washington, D.C. And they serve more than half the U.S. population and manufacturing base, which sets them up a lot for economic growth. Now Logan's going to get us started with our problem statement.
After many conversations with Norfolk Southern, it became clear there are 2 main problems we wanted to tackle as a team. The first being we want to find areas of opportunity for growth in Norfolk Southern, and the second was to improve customer service. The question we came up to summarize these 2 things were: what opportunities are available for Norfolk Southern to improve local operating performance adherence, also known as LOPA, service metrics for various locations, and can these solutions be applied throughout the network? I'm going to move into our project introduction. After we went over overall our data and find out what our goals was for this project, the first thing we wanted to do was be able to score all the serving yards. To do this, we wanted to create a performance metric. Once this metric was completed, we could then move into each of the following steps. First being to compare the serving yards. When the performance metric was created, each serving yard will be applied to, will have a number applied to them, and we could rank them from the top performing serving yard to the bottom. The next thing we wanted to do is look at the network as a whole and all the serving yards combined. When we do this, we can create a framework to look at performance and see areas of opportunities for growth. Hopefully this will lead to enhanced resilient service. Now I'm going to move on to the team objectives. Norfolk Southern made it very clear that they wanted us to focus on their customer relations. By looking at first mile and last mile opportunity areas, we can focus on customer-centric solutions that help Norfolk Southern and their customers grow. The second thing we wanted to look at was resource allocation. That's the fastest and easiest way to help Norfolk Southern grow, and will help streamline business processes and create for greater simplicity. And the last thing, as I mentioned before, we wanted to create a framework for performance. This will set a baseline for performance across the entire company and hopefully create a structure for them going forward. I'm going to pass it to Brock to talk about our research and analysis.
Thank you. Once we had our problem statement figured out, we could then begin to look at our data. Norfolk Southern provided us with quite a large amount of data. We had to figure out a way to be able to use this data more efficiently. We decided that the best way to do this was to create data visualizations and dashboards for data analysis. This way, we could see the data and how the different variables played with each other, and that way we could move on. We could take those visualizations and look at them, and then drill down into those visualizations to distill out our recommendations for Norfolk Southern. And once we had our recommendations for Norfolk Southern based off our data, we could look at the economic benefits that these recommendations could provide for the company. So unfortunately, we can't provide some of the dashboards due to confidentiality, but I will just talk about them. Here are some of the dashboards that we made before we got into our performance metric. We had some key insights from these, such as we identified how different instances of LOPA non-compliance codes, there's typically a few of them that are much more common than many of the other reasons. And these are the ones that we wanted to focus on, and we believe Norfolk Southern should focus on how to improve on. Additionally, we wanted to look at how Day of the Week affected Norfolk Southern's ability to deliver to their customers. And so we had a dashboard that looked at this, and we found that throughout the days of the week, there was more instances of non-compliance at the beginning of the week and this sort of tapered off at the end of the week until we noticed that there was a jump on Friday. And we believe this jump on Friday in non-compliance is caused by compounding issues from earlier in the week. Cars that are not able to be delivered, say on Monday or Tuesday, are then put off and then kind of build up, and which causes more problems later in the week, which we believe that different resource allocation for Norfolk Southern could help alleviate this issue and reduce non-compliance as a whole. Additionally, we found that there's an inverse correlation between the LOPA compliance percentage of a serving yard and the amount of total miles that they have to travel to service their customers. So if you have a serving yard with customers that are a lot more spread out, they tend to have more issues with reliability and servicing their customers. Now I'll pass it to Jackson to talk about a performance metric.
Thank you, Brock. The next step in the team solution development was to create a performance metric that could be used to not only compare the different serving yards within the Blue Ridge division, but could be used as a framework for evaluating the different divisions within Norfolk Southern's network. Starting with the numerator, the first component of our metric is the total number of cars planned for a serving yard. And this is to give us a measure of the volume a serving yard's handling. We then took that volume and multiplied it by the serving yard's compliance percentage to have a measure of how compliant their service is. And then we took that numerator and divided it by the total number of hours worked to have a measure of how a serving yard is allocating its resources to achieve that level of service. And so this performance metric can be used to evaluate the different efficiencies of the different serving yards. Building off of that metric, we then create a performance matrix that can be used to compare the different serving yards. So our metric makes up the x-axis, the number of planned cars makes up the y-axis, and the two reference lines are the averages of each axis, and they make up the 4 quadrants. Starting with the upper left quadrant, this is what we call the opportunity zone. These are serving yards that have a high degree of volume, but they don't handle that volume efficiently as evidenced by their low performance scores. Moving to the upper right quadrant, this is what we call the ideal zone. This is where you want the serving yards to end up. These are serving yards that have high performance scores and high volume. Moving to the bottom left quadrant, this is the investigation zone. These are serving yards that have low volume and low performance scores. And so a deeper dive would be needed to understand how we can move those serving yards from the investigation zone to the ideal zone. And then the bottom right quadrant is the growth zone. These are serving yards that have high performance scores, but low volume relative to its peers. And so the two zones of interest that we built our recommendations for were the growth zone and the opportunity zone. For the opportunity zone, these are serving yards that the focus needs to be to reallocate those resources. And then for the growth zone, this is where the marketing effort should be focused because these serving yards are the most primed to have an increase in volume due to their already efficient operations. Next, I'll pass it to Paul to talk about our economic analysis.
Thank you, Jackson. So for our growth zone, we were unable to show you all our recommendations because of our strict NDA. However, for our opportunity zone, we were looking at ways of decreasing the amount of resources that each individual serving yard is absorbing in order to generate cost savings for the company. And there are many different ways of doing this, but the most prevalent one that we identified was increasing the average train length for each delivery that was done at a specific serving yard. And for one area, we discovered a 20% decrease in working hours through this one methodology. And this resulted in a cost savings of over $1 million in the 2 years that we investigated. And this is compounded later on throughout the years. Now Logan's going to talk about one of our other recommendations.
For one of the instances of non-compliance that we dealt with over the majority of our project, the best course of action we felt to help alleviate this issue was to impose a tariff on certain customers. To do this, we went through our first 2 years of data. So the data we received was from 2022 and 2023. And if this tariff were to be imposed on this certain instance of non-compliance, we expected around $4 million of revenue for those 2 years. And after a full year of this being in place, as you can see on the graph in 2025, we expect about a 50% decrease in non-compliance due to customers not wanting to pay this tariff over time. Now I'm going to pass it to Brock to talk about our takeaways.
So our final thoughts for final recommendation of the project, we believe that we created a framework for Norfolk Southern that they can take and kind of expand out to their other divisions, and then they can use to analyze their business model more effectively. For our final thoughts for the program itself, this program gave us a very great experience with the client-facing work and a lot of hands-on experience. Additionally, it provided us with an opportunity to work directly with industry professionals, which will be invaluable to all of us as we continue on with our careers.
And lastly, we just want to acknowledge everybody who helped us out with this project, everybody at Norfolk Southern and all the staff at the CBA. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And that concludes our presentation. I know Mike's got one.
So the thing that strikes me about this one is there's probably a whole lot of quantitative data that you dealt with, like average train car length. You mentioned.
Yeah.
Is there any qualitative data that's popped up that surprised you?
I wouldn't say it surprised us, but there is a lot of qualitative data. There's so there's two different types of like pulling the cars from like a train station. You either pull it or you place it.
Right.
And that was one of the two different types of qualitative data that we investigated. I mean, there's plenty of different ones like talking about the location, like customer location, either serving yard location, either like train ID, stuff like that. So there's a big mix of both.
Did you discover maybe a yard that did things very, very well and there was some learning lessons from that particular yard that you needed to call out specifically to
Yeah.
in or what have
So
you?
one of the things that we did for for Norfolk Southern was identify the top and bottom performers in their division. And so we identified the top like 10 or 15% of the serving yards in this division and the bottom 10 or 15%. And as a way to say like these are the ones that are performing the best, and that Norfolk Southern themselves need to investigate to figure out what they're doing differently. Why are they handling so much like their increased volume so much better than some of the other serving yards?
It has always struck me with those kinds of projects that some of that qualitative stuff pops out that you need.
And building off that, we found that one of our highest performing server yards is actually located in very close proximity to two of our underperforming server yards. And so we thought that'd be a very feasible area to kind of reallocate some of those resources.
Well done.